In this final video, we're going to add find, update, and delete functionality to our app. That will give us the full range of CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete in our menu-driven app. After our add record function, but before the main loop function, let's create a new one called find_record. What we need to do is define a variable called doc, which will get the results of our getRecord function. As you may remember, getRecord is our little helper function that will find documents by first and last name. If we do have some results, then we want to print a blank line first. Next, we're going to use a for loop to iterate through the keys and values within the doc.items method. The first thing we want to check is if the key is not equal to _ID. The ID, if you remember, is the default key that gets created by Mongo, which we don't want to display. If the key is not equal to _ID, then let's print the key using .capitalize plus a colon and space to separate the value, also using .capitalize. This will print both the key and value with the first letter capitalized because we've stored our data in all lowercase letters for ease. All that's left to do for this is go to option 2 of our menu, remove the print statement, and call our new find_record function. Save the file, and let's run the app in the terminal using Python 3 mongo_project.py. We want to find a record by name, so select option 2, which will prompt us for a first name and a last name. Let's search for Saoirse Ronan that we added in the previous video. Perfect, you can see that it successfully found her document and printed all keys and values using the capitalize method. This will now work for any document in the database, so let's try option 2 again, but this time we'll search for Terry Pratchett using lowercase letters. You can see that we get his information just fine, and that's because we're using the .lower method. We can actually search in any combination of uppercase mixed with lowercase, and it will still find the data correctly. Our find functionality has been tested and works perfectly, so I'll stop the app and clear the terminal for now. Let's go back into our project and add the functionality to edit a record. After our find function, let's add 2 blank lines and make sure to remove any indentation that shouldn't be there. We need to define a new function called edit_record. Again, we are going to store the results of our getRecord function in a variable called doc and check to see if there's something in the results. This time, we're going to create an empty dictionary called update_doc, and we're going to add values to that dictionary while iterating over our key value pairs. That dictionary will form the basis of what we're going to use and insert into the database. Yet again, we also want to filter out the _ID field since we don't want to edit that field. What we're going to do this time is for each iteration, we'll provide the key for our update_doc dictionary and set that equal to a user input prompt. The value for the input will display the current key, capitalized, and then inside of square brackets, purely for visual reference, we'll show the current value of what we're editing. This might look a bit confusing at first, but once we run the app, I think it might help to understand what this format is doing. K is for the key, and V is for the value, which could have been assigned any variable name, but it's common practice to just use K and V. Sometimes, though, we don't always want to change every single piece of information. What we can do is put a quick check to see if the input was left blank or empty. If so, then we don't actually want to update the existing information that's set as the value. We just want to leave it the same as it was before, so we'll set the update_doc key back to the value of the original value. That will retain the original V value without updating that field, but we'll demonstrate that shortly in case it's still a bit confusing. That completes our for loop over our key value pairs to update, so make sure we come back to the proper indentation, which is equal to the for loop itself. Add another try except block to check that our document gets updated successfully. We'll call the collection and use the .update_1 method. It's the current document that we want to update, so we'll use the doc variable that was retrieved above. Our second argument will be the $set keyword with the update_doc dictionary that we've just created. Technically, we don't need to use the $set keyword. It should also work with just doc and update_doc, since those are both proper dictionaries. Print a blank line, and then we'll print document updated. For now, the exception will just print our usual error accessing the database message. All we need to do now is copy the function name and paste it into option 3 of our menu. Save the file, then let's start the app in the terminal. When we select option 3, we're prompted for our first and last name, so it knows which document we'd like to edit. I'm going to use Saoirse Ronan again for demonstration. As you can see, it shows the key of first and the current value in square brackets, which is Saoirse. Well, we aren't updating her name, so we can just hit enter for the name fields to leave them as is. Her date of birth and gender aren't changing either, so skip those as well. For the purposes of this demonstration, let's just say she's starring in a new film that requires her to have brown hair. We can see that she's currently got blonde hair, but let's update that to brown and hit enter. Also, let's assume she's changing her occupation from actress to CEO. Finally, her nationality will remain as Irish, so skip that one. Excellent, the document has been updated. Let's select option 2 and find her record just to confirm that these two fields have indeed been updated, which they have. Essentially, when a field is left blank, it returns the default value, but any fields that aren't left blank will be modified to the new data. We're coming up to the end soon, and all we need to do now is add delete functionality. While we're still within the menu function, we might as well change option 4 to call our next function, which will be delete_record. After our previous edit record function, let's define the new delete record function. As we are quite familiar with now, we're going to store the results of our getRecord function in the doc variable and check if any results were returned. If there are results, print a blank line. Using a defensive programming approach, we want to make sure that we're deleting the appropriate document, so we'll iterate through and print each of the values. If the correct document is displayed to screen, then we'll set a new variable called confirmation and use that to store the results of our user input prompt. Is this the document that you want to delete? \n for a new line, Y or N for yes or no. I'm just printing a blank line before and after this prompt for visual appearance only. It's purely optional. If confirmation.lower is equal to Y in lowercase, then we're going to try col.remove with our doc variable passed as the document to be deleted. We'll then print document deleted, but if that fails, then we'll add our exception message, error accessing the database. Finally, we'll add an else statement as part of the if statement above. That way, if we type anything other than Y, then it's going to print document not deleted, and then return to the main menu. With that, our function is now finished and should work just fine. Let's save the file and test it. Select option 4 to delete a record, and when prompted, let's try to delete the document for Terry Pratchett. It found his record and is displaying it to screen, but then asks us if it's indeed the document we'd like to delete. First, let's demonstrate by typing something random, like the letter F, and hit enter. You can see that it shows document not deleted, which means so far so good. We'll try that again, so select option 4 and search for Terry Pratchett. It found him, so this time we'll type Y to confirm deletion of his document. Excellent, it shows document deleted, but don't worry if you have a deprecation warning. Let's test it still works anyway, so choose option 2 and try to search for Terry Pratchett. Wonderful, it's definitely deleted his record because we can see, error, no results found. Well done for completing this module. We've learned how to create a MongoDB database in the cloud and how to add data to it using the web frontend. We've also seen how to install Mongo's command line tools and use them for the basic CRUD operations of creating, reading, updating, and deleting data. Finally, we saw how to talk to the MongoDB database using the PyMongo library in Python and brought all of that together in our walkthrough project at the end of this module. In future lessons, we're going to have a look at how to get this displaying on your own website by integrating Python, PyMongo, MongoDB, and the Flask mini framework.